Hey there, welcome to Inside Marketing with me, Mike Grehan. Today we are live on 65. Yeah, we are literally live on the 65th floor of the Empire State Building here in New York City. You know, I spent 10 years of my career working and hanging out here. So for me, it's just like coming home. So for this season of Inside Marketing, we are focusing on the underlying theme of training and education. And by that, I mean kids coming out of college into the workforce, right through to those seasoned marketing executives with years and years of experience, because we're all having to come to terms with this new era of marketing in the age of artificial intelligence. So I invited one guy. I know he knows both sides of this. He is a professor of digital marketing and still teaching, and his full-time job, he is head of digital marketing for one of the world's largest consulting firms. We will also be talking about digital marketing analytics. I'll be talking to a super smart lady from Sony PlayStation about her role on the analytics side there. She is also the keynote speaker at the upcoming Marketing Analytics Summit, which is celebrating 25 years this year. So I invited the founder of the Digital Marketing Analytics Summit to come and join us for this show as well. There's lots to talk about, so let's get started. Here we are again, live on 65. I am so happy today because we've been talking about education in the industry for a while, and of course with the advent of AI apparently just dropping on everybody, although had they been paying attention, they might have not been so surprised when it came around. But most of the questions that I get asked now is, Mike, where are you learning your stuff from? Well, that's a different thing. But generally speaking, I think even those that learned marketing in the academic sense are having to relearn or unlearn some things. And then, of course, everybody who's sitting in an executive role now is thinking to themselves, geez, do I have to go back to university? Do I have to go back to college? Where do we get education from? Where did we learn from? And one name sprang to mind. Absolutely the first choice for this. He is indeed a professor of marketing, a professor of digital marketing. Not only that, a genuine practitioner who's held many executive roles at the top of the marketing pile. So Lou Cohen. Lou, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me,
whooshing up to the top of the Empire, well, nearly at the 65th floor. That's still a long ride in the elevator.
It is.
Though. So you and I have known each other for a while. It's great to see you, man. It's
yes,
been a
likewise.
while. Yeah. Do you know, I'm just thinking the last time that we did a thing together, an event together, it was here in the city, and we were on a conference stage, and I was moderating, and it was about SEO, but somehow we ended up talking about marijuana. Now we're going to come back. We're going to come back to that at a certain point, but that'll give you something to look forward to. But you've had a great career, I mean, obviously, and you've got a great reputation in the industry. But for the benefit of those people who may not know who you are, Lou,
sure.
Give us a bit of your background. I mean, the educational side is really important, but there are very few people who actually have that kind of academic background that you have, and steeped in great practical experience as well.
Yeah.
Where did it all start?
So honestly, it goes back to my undergrad days in the 90s when I was at Carnegie Mellon and had this idea for a website during my first internship at Marvel Comics. And I built collectorsexchange.com with a friend of mine, which was designed to be an auction and classified ad website for collectibles. And of course, somehow we ended up with an audience of stamp and coin collectors from Europe. I don't know how that happened, but we ran it as a side project for about 8 years. And that's really where I learned digital marketing. I didn't know that that was even a term or a thing in those days. Nobody did. Nope. But I got to be part of that initial wave during the dot-com boom years and of course the bust years, kind of figuring it out as you go, and took that into a series of e-commerce companies for a period of time, which then landed me an opportunity to be part of the first team building what became Bing Ads. So back in 2005, I was part of Microsoft Advertising, was there for about 6 years, and as they were exiting that business and getting out of programmatic media, I landed a role over at Citi, where I ran US consumer digital marketing, was there for 4.5 years, became Chief Marketing Officer for Wolters Kluwer in their legal and regulatory division, helped turn around a declining business, and started growing that by using pretty straightforward strategies that we now employ today around CRM, marketing automation, ABM. And for the last almost 7 years, I've been at EY. I'm currently Chief Digital Officer for EY in the Americas, and I oversee all of our brand, media, .com, MarTech, marketing analytics, AI for marketing, and whatever else my CMO throws at me. But on the side, for the last 16 years, I've been an adjunct professor. These days, I'm teaching at 3 universities, NYU, Yeshiva University, and Baruch College.
So, like me, I have no doubt you'll be saying to yourself, wow, this guy has a great background. Look at all of these fantastic executive roles he's had. But the same as me, we're thinking, and he worked for Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
that may be the last thing in the list of things on your LinkedIn profile.
I mean, I've got great stories. I met Stan Lee and a lot of the artists and writers. It was a fun summer.
How come we never had that conversation? We've had beers before, and I've never done that. There's still time for that.
Yep.
So great, yeah. And of course, you and I have known each other for a while because, like everybody else, whilst the industry was beginning, I was focused. I mean, I have a conventional, classically trained marketing background, but in 1995, I was introduced to this thing called the World Wide Web. I mean, I'd heard about the internet. World Wide Web was kind of a new thing then. And I was looking at that and I was thinking, yeah, this could be a big deal. So I actually founded my first internet marketing consultancy in 1995. And people will say to me sometimes, what a visionary, Mike, what a great thing, an internet marketing consultancy in 1995. And I say, that was the dumbest thing I ever did, because in 1995, nobody needed an internet marketing consultancy.
It was just too soon.
Exactly. So I had to sit around and wait for a while. So what we actually did is mainly buying domains, and then it was email, setting up email for people, you know. But by 1998, I was full-time into what we now call SEO. I've always thought that was completely the wrong name for us because, as I said over and over again, search engine optimization, I've been in this business for 31 years now. I've never met anybody who's optimized a search engine except a search engine engineer. So I always thought that was, but it started just with a handful of people. Back in the day, there was just me. And then I wrote a book on that. And then somehow along the way, you and I met. It was quite some time ago. And I was very fortunate because even you mentioned Citibank. Whilst you were at Citi, there were a couple of times that I came in.
Yeah, no, I remember having you come join us when we were in Long Island City and in one of our top-level meeting rooms with a great view of the city. We had to do a presentation on some of the digital trends going on.
Yeah, think about some of the views that we've had. So let's just get down to the nuts and bolts of this. What are the things that I did mention to you in advance? I mentioned about being a classically trained marketer. You go to university, you learn all of this stuff, and yes, some of it's a bit like learning to drive. You know, you learn how to do all of this stuff, you learn how to do it correctly, and then when nobody's looking, you break all of the rules and get on and do your own kind of thing. But one of the foundational, the cornerstones of marketing is the 4 Ps. And usually if you say that in front of, seasoned marketers, they're like, oh, do me a favor kind of thing. But that is the place to start. However, I don't know if you've noticed it, but there is this undercurrent in the industry now of people talking about that cornerstone, the 4 Ps, product, price, place, promotion. Of it having been invented mainly about the product, and everybody's only interested in the customer now. So we shouldn't be thinking about the 4 Ps. So if we're not talking about the 4 Ps, what should we be talking about? And is it the end of the 4 Ps, by the way?
I don't think it's the end of the 4 Ps or the 5 Cs, like those like
Or the
classic,
6 Is or the various other things.
right? Like all these different frameworks, even the sales funnel, or McKinsey has the McKinsey loop. These are all concepts that are trying to help business people understand how consumers operate within the world of consumerism. And we need these frameworks to help, especially new people to work, understand the basics. It's a foundational layer. But once you start getting into specific industries or further to specific products, those nuances may look different, right? How Pepsi goes to market versus Coca-Cola. I actually just did a lecture about this last week with my social media students.
Wow.
Like, we did the Pepsi challenge, and I'm like, why did Pepsi go to the Super Bowl with an ad that had the polar bears from Coke? And now Coke is out there with a set of ads for Coke Zero, where it's the choice of every generation, going right after the choice of a new generation from Pepsi. Like, why are they batting heads when in reality the majority of their business is all B2B and has nothing to do with consumer demand for Coke or Pepsi? It's which one's available to me at the store that I'm currently standing at.
Yep.
And so I'm like, how important is their social presence to your buying decision? And they're like, this doesn't make a difference to me. And this is a group of undergrads at NYU. I'm like, but you don't understand who's their customer in the world of social media. When did we make a buying decision about soda? At what age? And I got them to recognize it's probably in their teenage years when they made a decision about which soda they're most loyal to, whether they consciously thought about that or not. And okay, so social media could influence you if you're a teenager to consider Coke or Pepsi differently. But why would they? Like, why would you choose it differently? Is it the taste, the price, the access? Like, what is it about it? And it's like, okay, let's go back to the 4 Ps, right? What's the product? It's both soda water, right? And they both taste pretty similar. There's little difference. I'm personally more of a Coke fan, right? But the product is pretty equivalent, right? So great, product, not the issue. Place matters, because if you walk into a certain restaurant and they only serve Pepsi or they only serve Coke, you have no choice. But if you walk into a supermarket, you absolutely have a choice. And that's the buyer they're fighting for. It's the one at the supermarket.
Yep.
Okay, so place matters. Price matters, because if you're showing 2-liter bottles of Coke and 2-liter bottles of Pepsi, and one of them is 50 cents less per bottle, you might be swayed enough to choose the cheaper product.
Yep.
Okay, and now how much of that was about the consumer? The person actually didn't matter, because anybody could be a buyer of soda. So when you start to break it down into the pieces, you could do this for any business, any product, any type of thing. And it's that foundational layer of understanding consumer behavior that we're trying to educate the current student population about. Now, 30 years into your career, you kind of have a sense for how this works, and you don't need such a formal framework to manage that perspective, because you're going to just understand it's okay. Price could make a real difference at the supermarket, but it means nothing in the retail distribution or the entertainment venues. Because if you're at Citi Field going to a Mets game and you want a soda, you're going to pay whatever they're asking for.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, you are trapped
Exactly.
into the. It's interesting as well, because you mentioned out of the 4 Ps, the one that was always the oddest one that I thought that was just kind of pushed in there with a shoehorn is place, because actually it should be a D, it's distribution. That's right. And that's what you're talking about. It's more about the distribution. So yeah, so I don't think that, like I say, as a seasoned marketer, that I worry so much about we should still be looking at the 4 Ps. I just wonder if people are dismissing it in that sense. Where is a student going to start? And I think fundamentally it is a very important thing. And it's interesting that you say as well, that Coke and Pepsi don't sell Coke, they distribute to the people who sell it, like a car dealer does. So how do you have that relationship? Well, again, apart from shipping product and selling it, which is one thing, there is the kind of hearts and minds and the brand thing that you still have to do.
Right.
And I remember seeing, it was a presentation by, and names escape me, but it was the agency that was responsible for working with Colgate-Palmolive, and they were Colgate. and they were toothpaste. And I remember him telling this story on the stage, saying that when you work for this huge company, blah, 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 we've got so many great brands, and he rattles off so many other brands they've got. He said, but internally in the building, people go, yeah, but at least we're not toothpaste, because that was so far down the line. He said, and then we get this guy called Avinash Kaushik.
Yep, I know Avinash.
Right, Avinash, yeah, who's been around for a long time. And he was consulting with that agency and with Colgate. And apart from anything else, again, these things stick in mind. The guy was saying, so this guy called Avinash came in, told us our website was absolute crap to begin with.
He did the same thing to me when I worked at Citi.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's
his standard.
Yeah.
He said we hated him at the time, but then we all thanked him for it afterwards when we realized what he was saying. But the important thing was that they got into a discussion about the brand and about social media and how important it was. And this was a great admission from the agency guy who said, who the hell is ever going to get interested in doing social media about toothpaste? You know, he said, and then Avinash asked us to do some checking, and we did. And we were all over the place, because the Colgate smile, after all of these years, is still a phrase that we use. When you see somebody with a big smile, you still use the Colgate
Well, it's
smile.
like, what do Crest and Colgate actually sell? It's not toothpaste. They sell smiles.
Yep.
Right? And, you know, Amazon, as much as we'd like to think it's an e-commerce business, they're really a cloud business and B2B. And
yeah. So when you get down to the core of it, you could break it all down. So anyway, that's good for me, because I think, you know, kids should still pick up a book and start with the 4 Ps.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, like learning to drive, learn all of that stuff that you need to know, and then you'll do it your own way.
Well, it's really interesting. Like the world of academia around marketing is definitely going through a bit of a shift. And the core concepts that have been tried and true, like the 4 Ps, the 5 Cs, they do still show up. The sales funnel still shows up. But it is that foundational understanding of like core concepts around consumer behavior. And what I have 3 daughters. My oldest is thinking about a career in marketing, and she's a sophomore in high school right now. And I've tried to explain to her, I'm like, the one thing AI can't replace today is a true understanding of the audience and the consumer. And if you can understand the things that customers don't say, AI will never know that, because it's not said.
Absolutely. If it's not a large language model, has to pull in, there has to be some input.
There has to be a data point.
Output, yeah.
And I'm like, if you can understand how consumer behavior shows up, how it operates, how audiences react and differ, there's all sorts of research and studies being done by different types of research entities, not the like Ipsos and Gartners of the world, but there are certainly other ones where they're like during neurological studies on people's reactions to commercials. It's like there is still value in understanding consumer behavior. And if you can understand that and apply these other concepts that are foundational frameworks that we as marketers really just bank on and understand in our go-to-market efforts, then you can start to find the nuance that actually makes your business, your brand stand out differently.
So the consumer behavior thing is really important, because I saw an interview with the CEO of Visa, I think it was the beginning of last year, and it surprised me in the video, because he was talking about the agentic world coming around, and how Visa was at the forefront, and how that we would just have these agents. The one thing that he said that really stuck in my mind, though, is he said that the agent that is working for you on your behalf can actually look at so much inventory that's all over the world on the web, and literally do it in minutes where it would take you days.
That's right.
And come back and make recommendations to you, a lot of which may be based on the price now. You know, you may be used to buying and paying a little extra for a brand, but when the agent comes back and says, yes, but the ingredients in this one are the same and it's $2 cheaper or whatever, then you may just get it cheaper. Now that is great in the fact that for a consumer it saves us a lot of time, and the agent will get to know a lot more about you, you know, from behavior and habits and those kind of things. But won't there be some kind of brand erosion there?
Yes.
For the simple reason that, again, looking at my SEO background, I've always said one of the greatest things about SEO are those informational searches that, you know, start at the very beginning. And if you are a brand and you can help somebody at the beginning of the journey, then you create that little bit of brand affinity that goes with you all the way to the checkout.
Yeah.
And then, so there's less friction when you get to the checkout kind of thing. But if you've got an agent that's doing all of that for you, then the notion of brand, like you say, may go out and may just come down to cost. So we'll come back to that, but as we did the fundamental thing, like I say, I don't expect people like even myself or yourself who've been seasoned marketers for a very long time to think, wow, we've got AI, I should go back and check on the 4 Ps. I just wanted to make sure that that's a place for your academic to begin.
The reality of like undergraduate education today is the students want to be advanced in AI. But the reality is they're going into the workforce, and that apprenticeship layer, that entry layer, is getting eroded by AI. And so they're trying to skip. In undergrad, they actually need to get more of that foundational understanding and get into more of the mechanics. I very much...
Because they're being replaced by an agent
that entry level work is getting replaced.
Yeah.
So if they want to be successful in today's workforce, they have to do more of that apprenticeship during that 4-year undergrad program. And what I see a lot of my undergrads and others doing internships and side hustles, and they're working while they're in school because they need to be more competitive now than ever before when they're going into the job market, because they have to skip that entry-level apprenticeship layer and start to be more impactful in the work they do when they get a job.
So that brings us to the seasoned, I've been in the industry, marketing for a long time, whether it's B2B, B2C, whatever it is. I've learned all of the things that I need to do. I know all of the nuances here. And I kind of alluded to this before. I've been looking, because as a member of ACM, which is the world's largest computing society, inside ACM, I'm a member of the Special Interest Group for Information Retrieval, which is a subset of AI. So I've been watching it for a long time. Therefore, when it dropped, because I've been looking at the science, it wasn't a surprise for me. But to so many people that I know who have these senior executive roles, it kind of hit them out of the blue.
Yep.
And that's what they ask me, and going back to my intro, Mike, can you help me understand some of this? I'm going to get a hold. What is it that I need to do? And that's what had me thinking about you. You need somebody who actually understands from an academic point of view, whether the kids are being taught the right thing to get into the industry in the first place.
Yeah.
And if you're already in there, who do you talk to who might be able to give you some pointers on what it is that you need to know? Well, it has to be somebody who has the same challenges, because given that you've had such great experience, and maybe like me, you weren't as surprised when a large language model or the AI, well, certainly machine learning, dropped. But where do you go to learn?
Yeah. So I'm going to say this right to the audience. AI is the newest 75-year-old technology you're ever going to work with.
Absolutely, yeah. One of the few people I know who can actually say that, and it's true. It's been around for so long, and yet...
Right, and here it is. And it's this generative AI version that's more conversational that really threw everybody off, because I think there was a portion of people that understood this capability existed and was going to come to market. And then there's the majority of the world that had no clue it was going to show up the way it did. And so there's different aspects of it that we have to consider. Agents right now are probably the most talked about and disruptive aspect of it, whereas people are worried agents are going to take away jobs. And there is a reality, like, yes, agents are going to displace the work. It's not going to replace the work, it's going to displace the work. In that, okay, a task that I normally spend hours doing over and over again, I should be able to build an agent that does that for me over and over so I don't have to keep doing it. There's going to be other aspects of it that, frankly, we need our marketing teams to still understand and manage in QA, because do we really trust it not to hallucinate? And there will come a point in the future where it's good enough and we don't have to worry as much about that, but we do have to worry about that today, and especially in regulated industries like I work in. But for the most part, agentic solutions today are very helpful, and they free up time for marketing teams to be more strategic and do better work. But you still need a human at the core of it. You need a person that's directing traffic, telling it what to do, and making sure the output is actually what you want it to be. So we're not there yet where it's totally replacing things, but today it is displacing work. But probably one of my biggest focuses is on AI discoverability, because to your point, that buying decision happens much earlier in the process now than it ever did. And if you're not part of that consideration set, you never have a chance to win the business. And in the world of B2B, I've been talking in the industry about this for a while now. AI discoverability has to be a priority for every company. What that looks like today, though, will look different in 3 months, probably very different in 6.
And it will, because I did a presentation maybe it could be 5 years ago, I don't know, certainly at least 4 years ago. And in the presentation, I was talking about the evolution of machine learning and how Google's actually been using machine learning since 1999, 2000.
Yep.
They started introducing it then. And that we would reach a point where the machine learning would become so important to us as part of the way that we communicate with devices. And we're like, well, that's about... Well, we went through this whole period of voice search, if you remember that. And everybody said, yeah, it's just a novelty kind of thing. But as I've always said, it's like looking at websites. There is no structure between them all. So the contact me page and button can be anywhere on. Do I have to learn the interface of 1 million websites every time I go to one? The same thing with apps on my phone. You know, I've got 100 apps on there. Do I need to know the interface with everything? No, you just need to use the universal interface, which is hello, and speak to the device,
That's right.
Okay? So certainly there's going to be a lot more of that, and that's where the agent comes in, because the agent is going to be learning a lot more about you, your habits, what you buy, when you buy, and then can preempt. And instead of you having to search, will actually just go ahead and make some decisions for you, or come back and give you a hint on things that you need. And then the other thing is that I did actually try and explain in artificial intelligence that you can have there's weak AI and strong AI, okay, which again, looking at it very fundamentally. But even weak AI is really mind-blowing. And the way that I explain that is that if you ask Siri to order you a pizza, she'll order you a pizza.
Yes.
If you ask an autonomous vehicle to drive you home, it will drive you home. It's mind-blowing that they can do that. But if you ask the autonomous vehicle to order you a pizza and you ask Siri to drive you home,
right,
you're a hungry guy going nowhere because they don't know how to do each other's job. Then the other thing that I mentioned is something called task completion. That's been around in IR for a long time, and Google's come pretty close to it, but never got 100% there. Well, what does task completion mean? It means that if I start to plan a vacation, okay, I've got to do everything. I have to look for the flights, I have to find somewhere to stay, I have to do all of that. Then eventually, when I've managed to get all of this data that I've compiled from Google, I then go ahead with my credit card and start and pay for things. What if I just said to Siri or to an agent, I'd like to take the family on vacation to the Algarve, Portugal. Yeah, what's the best that I can do? And then the agent goes off and does everything, and it's got the credit card. In fact, it's even booked the Uber to pick you up. Okay, well, we've reached that point. I think we've reached it a bit quicker than I thought that it would get there.
We're not quite there yet for most, right? You still have to know how to prompt it correctly to get to that outcome. And even then, you have to have the licenses to the right AI that can connect to the right things to do that. Because if you're...
Forget what I just said, by the way.
No, but it is possible to do everything you just said if you've got the right technology set up and access.
It can be done, yeah.
It can be done. It's just the average person today is barely scratching the surface and capability of these Gen AI tools, and let alone agents. It's remarkable how many people I've talked to in different industries, different companies, where they are in the wild west of agents. Everybody's building agents, but it's for like very specific tasks. Nobody is yet at that point where it's like, actually, I've got an orchestration of agents that does a series of tasks at scale consistently well. I think this next year, we're going to see that start to show up more.
Agents communicating with agents.
That's right.
It's like OpenClaw. So this conversation is great, Lou, and we could talk forever, and this is just the start, I'm sure, of a series of conversations. But given that EY is literally one of the world's largest consulting firms, up there in the top 4, then again, don't worry, your boss is not watching. EY is now tasked with telling its clients, giving advice to its own clients, which again are huge corporations, on how they are supposed to deal with AI, not just on the marketing side, but generally across the business, you know. So how is a company like EY, themselves, how are they growing with the dawning of AI, and then being able to come back and present something to their clients that say, and be able to give them just some guidance?
Yeah, so we have a microsite, ey.ai, where we feature a lot of the stuff that we do for clients. And I often say I sit in a very privileged seat for the work I do, because I not only get to do this for one of the biggest brands in the world, I also get access to these consultants that are telling the other big companies in the world how to do the things I do. And so I get to tap into those guys every so often. And some of the things they've been building with AI.
That's a side hustle he's got, by the way, contact.
But I mean, they are doing some remarkable things with AI for businesses and large enterprises. And I recently was introduced to somebody in our consulting team who is using OpenClaw and agentic type solutions to build things out for clients. And one of the agents that they showed us was for a customer service type program where it's responding to customer issues in real time. And they built what they called an empathy agent, so that all the writing from the customer service people that are actually responding to it actually was more empathetic to the person with their issue. And it's like, yeah, we kind of don't like certain companies that we do business with that we have to, like your insurance company for healthcare, probably not your favorite company on your list. But you know what? They provide a service that we all need. We need access to healthcare, and that helps us with our bills. But if you have a complaint, you're already not happy. So shouldn't it be a way for your customer service person to be more empathetic? They created an agent that helps their customer service agents be more empathetic. I'm like, that's kind of brilliant. Who came up with that? And they're like, oh, we understood something that our clients didn't about how their customers interact with them. And so we proposed this agent and built it for them.
So that's a great thing. I mean, because again, it's like, you know, the outside in, bring somebody from the outside, because we're too close on the inside to be able to see something like that. But I do think that kind of sentiment analysis part of the thing is, you know, it's been around for a while, but it's also very important, particularly when you've got a large language model which is acting on behalf of your brand. It needs to understand the brand the same as you would understand it yourself, you know?
But our consultants, they've got these AI blueprints that they've been rolling out to clients and sharing with them about, like, we can help them build their specific needs into agents and solutions. And it's remarkable what's possible today. But I keep saying, like, in a few months, imagine what more is going to be possible. And it's fun to be part of the early days of the ecosystem establishing itself. Because I think back to 30 years ago, and I talk about SEO evolving. I'm like, I remember the white hat and the black hat days. And, you know, and I look at AI.
It was me who coined the term black hat, by the way. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't
way
know
back in the day. Yes, I did.
Well, it definitely stuck.
But I did.
I may have used some black hat tactics in the early days.
Everybody did, come on.
But with AI, like, I'm very concerned about ethical use of AI. You know, there is the end of days scenario that people think about where AI could just take over. And there's also a reality, like, it's not going to be the worst scenario and it's not going to be the easiest scenario. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. And I actually believe we're going to see, like, the European Union come up with some fairly strong guidelines around what ethical AI should be. And hopefully they're going to put some guardrails. I think the US has its own agenda under this current government, but the EU has some entities within it that look at data privacy and data management. And I believe they've got a path forward on ethical AI principles that could get adopted across the EU. And if it sticks in the EU, the world is going to have to keep and pay attention to it.
And that just prompts me to say that if you're thinking about analytics and how AI is impacting analytics, in the next segment on this show, I'm actually talking to the analytics engineer So she's going to kill me now because I've forgotten her title. It's a really cool one, but she's head of analytics with Sony PlayStation. And I'll be talking to Jim Stern, who is the founder of the Marketing Analytics Summit, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary this year. And here we are live on 65 with all of this great equipment. The only thing that I didn't bring was a clock somewhere. So yes, I'm having to do it the old-fashioned way. We're running out of time.
Okay.
But this is absolutely fantastic. And obviously we'll have Lou back within a few months, because this is an ongoing conversation. Do you know what we have to do, though? Because we didn't touch on it. Why were we talking about marijuana at that?
It probably was because of all the legalization stuff going on, and
it was something to do with Walter Kluwer and some of the searches that you were getting for
I know what it was. Yeah. So with Walter's Kluwer, we were supplying legal knowledge and legal software to companies, and the laws around marijuana and cannabis consumption in different markets was evolving rapidly, and so I had a need actually to be more discoverable when people were searching for laws around cannabis in different states, because we had software that actually addressed that for law firms. It was one of the more interesting topics. And if you're searching on a search engine for cannabis law, you're probably not smoking it. You're actually probably on the other side of it trying to regulate it. So it was okay.
And it is one of those interesting things about the quirky stuff that goes on in search, where it's kind of an ambiguous kind of search term to use, but with that proliferation of this state is legalizing it and those kind of things. But the funny thing was that I seem to remember at the end of that conversation, because there was a panel of us on stage, and then you said you were losing sleep over it. I was saying this is the only guy who he has a problem losing sleep over cannabis. Everybody finds it the other way around.
We had some fun with it.
We did. Lou, it's great. So thanks so much for coming in.
No, my pleasure.
And I'm loving this, that we can just come and hang out. But you will come back again, yeah?
Would love to.
Great to see you, Lou. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks again, Lou. Great guy, great conversation, and looking forward to more of the same in the very near future. We touched on the subject of digital marketing analytics, and we'll be talking more about that right after this. And here we are back again for another Inside Marketing. As usual, I am surrounded by greatness. I have with me two experts in the field of marketing analytics. Like everywhere else in the marketing field, the analytics field is changing considerably. One of my guests, Jim Stern, indeed, who you can probably see right now next to me. Jim has been around in the industry since the dawning. In fact, the Marketing Analytics Summit is celebrating its 25th anniversary. So Jim is celebrating 25 years of the conference, which we're going to talk about in a second. And I also have with me Jen Kunz, who is... Jen, please remind me, you have a fabulous title, and I'm so busy talking, I'm not thinking. Remind me again, your title is?
I'm the manager of analytics, excuse me, analytics engineers at PlayStation.
Wow, manager of analytics engineering at PlayStation. And when they say it's a great place to have some fun while you work, PlayStation is probably the place to do that. Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah. So, how long have you been with Sony and with PlayStation?
Only 9 months or so. Before that, I had been a consultant for the last 18 years. So this is my first time going client side. It's been very enlightening.
You have a proper job and a boss to go with it.
It's true.
How has it been for the first 9 months? Go ahead, your boss is not listening.
It's been really good. Certainly, I love all of the people I work with. Sony's a really big company and therefore has a lot of data governance challenges and competing tools and all of that. And it took me a long time to just get a lay of the land, but I'm excited about a lot of what we're doing.
Good. And you're going to be keynoting at the conference, so we'll find out a little bit more about that in a second. Just coming back to you, Jim, let's just do a little bit of history as we have to. Because the industry is changing so much, when you actually started the conference, we talked about e-metrics and gradually it evolved into marketing analytics. But in terms of the changes that you've seen over the years, has there been anything as dramatic as just having AI dropped on the entire industry?
There has not been anything as dramatic as AI being dropped on the industry since I can remember, and I'm old enough to remember the personal computer revolution, the internet coming in, the mobile coming in, artificial intelligence, machine learning happening. Yeah, no, it's a big deal.
So, I mean, when I first started speaking at your conference, I was talking about log file analysis. And I know from a little birdie not too far away from here, from actually another conversation with Jen, that the log files may be coming back into view again. So
All
we
goes full
might.
circle.
When I started the Marketing Analytics Summit, eMetrics Summit back then, there was an actual shouting match between two of the attendees about whether log file analysis or JavaScript was better. And 25 years later, the answer is still, well, you need both.
So yeah, again, I think we've moved on. There have been so many changes, kind of regulated industries that we have. There are problems with that. All of the issues around data, privacy matters, those kind of things. Like you say, going down to from log file analysis to everybody saying, "Oh, it's just one line of code. Just put my JavaScript in there, and that's it." You'll be able to see the future and everything in it, kind of thing. Um, and then, of course, you've also got the fact that in Europe they decided you can have this data, but you can't have that. And so I guess there are kind of a lot of things that have dropped into the analytics industry, but nothing quite as much as the way that AI is affecting the world around us, let alone just marketing analytics. One of the things, Jen, from a practitioner point of view, that I guess we talk about quite a lot in terms of the difference between, and I had this conversation with Jim over the many conversations that we've had, having mentioned e-metrics earlier on. Well, metrics is about measurement, and then looking at analytics. Analytics is about insights. So you give me some insights, and then perhaps I've got something to measure after that. But there is always this insight to action gap. So from the earliest days of people saying, "Oh, I noticed this in the log file. What are you going to do about it?" Has that gap kind of condensed a little bit that you can actually say, "We discovered this, and now you can do that with it"?
Uh, I don't know. In my experience, particularly as a consultant too, but even Sony plays up to it, I think most orgs are still struggling to get from the we have the data to the we are making really good use of the data and making decisions off of it. Certainly, there are a lot of personalization and recommendations and A/B testing and optimization that like acts on the data in real time. But I don't know. I suspect there are still a lot of analysts out there who are making reports for stakeholders and every now and then get really excited when we actually get to use it for insight. Though I'm sure it varies by company, but I know a lot of companies struggle with that.
So here's a difficult question for you. I know it's going to be difficult, but just thinking aloud. Given the fact that we do have this and we have the so what test, you've got the data, so what am I going to do with it, that kind of thing. But what about prioritization in terms of KPIs against metrics? If you were talking to somebody now about what they should be thinking about beyond vanity metrics for 2026, what should we actually be looking at, do you think?
Like, are you looking for specific examples? Because the first thing I think is almost my advice to most people is track less. That a lot of the time we are trying to track everything, every click, every action, and it's much harder, A, to maintain an implementation and data quality when you're tracking everything, but it's also a lot harder to sift through all of that to get actionable insight when really a lot of folks could track half of the things that they do and probably not see a huge decrease in actionable and valuable insights.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting because a while back, again, in a previous conversation that I had about analytics and data, and I think this is during the period that we used to talk about big data. If you remember the big data period, yeah. What is big data? And I do remember saying to me, people talk about the more data they have, the better informed they are. And this guy was telling me, the better data they have, the more informed you are. And then he said to me, it was a classic. He said, when you're trying to look for a needle in a haystack, adding more hay doesn't help you.
Exactly.
Kind of interesting. And the fact that you mentioned there are so many things that we could measure. This is lovely. I'm having some deja vu going back to earlier conferences with Jim here, because I remember Jim, and probably you won't even remember this yourself, but it was a classic opening at one conference when you were doing the keynote, and you actually started by saying, in the analytics field, we can measure just about anything. We can measure this, measure you get, and then you said, we can measure a mouse going across your screen. Pause for a second and said, why would we want to do that though? Again, given the fact that historically the conference has had to keep up to date with the industry, a lot of what we've talked about, or what you've talked about, kind of areas that have been covered in analytics are kind of looking at the data, because when we can see in the past, then we can gauge what's about to happen in the future. So we look at data historically. But now we talk about predictive analytics. So have we reached a point where it's just as important to see if we can do something with AI, machine learning, to guess what's in the future, as opposed to looking in the rearview mirror to see what was in the past?
Yes, we have a spectrum of measurement, and you measure things. What happened? That's reporting. Then there is what might happen, and that's predictive. And then there's what should happen, and that's prescriptive. And along the way, you get, oh, can we automate some of that for recommendation, for personalization? But the problem has always been the actualization, the operationalization, the insight to action, as you said before, because that's a political statement. If I can automate something, that's great, but we have to agree on what should be automated. If I, as an analyst, am using machine learning, am using any kind of AI, am using the best analytics tools in the world, if I don't understand the business, I can't provide any insight that has value. And if I do understand the business and I can provide something that looks valuable, then I have to convince the stakeholders to take action. And this is the never-ending problem of any consultant. I'm going to provide my best advice, and whether you take it or not is up to you. And whether somebody takes that advice, it's dependent on politics, it's dependent on incentives, it's dependent on identity. If I've been in marketing for 30 years and I think that radio advertising is more powerful than television, and I've staked my reputation on that, no amount of data is going to change my mind. I'm just going to say, maybe you think so. Maybe your data's wrong. That doesn't look right to me. Thank you so much for the report. This is my decision. That's a problem that's never going to go away.
So, Jen, what do you think about, given that Jim's just talked about, you can use AI to prepare a report, and maybe it might be better, it might be able to help you. But what about what's the reality of the AI generated report? Is that solving a problem for you, or is it going to create one?
AI is solving a problem when it creates a deterministic outcome, and that is, I'm going to use it to write the code that writes the report. Rather than asking AI to do the analysis, I'm going to ask AI to create a bunch of Python scripts that goes to that database and grabs that data, and that database to grab that, bring it together, munge it this way. I'm not going to ask it to add, subtract, multiply, and divide. I'm going to ask it to write code that I can count on that will do the same thing every time. It's brilliant at that. It saves me oodles of time. That's great. If I ask it to make a recommendation, it will, but is it trustworthy? That is completely unknown. So instead, I'm going to ask it for its opinion. What looks interesting in here? What might I consider? What other questions should I ask? Should I make this recommendation to that stakeholder at this time? What do you think? And then I'm bouncing ideas off it. Wildly useful. but turning it loose to do the analysis, I'm very uncomfortable there.
So I was going to point the question at both of you, and Jim jumped in first there. What do you
Sorry.
think about Jim's answer, Jen?
No, I agree absolutely. I think there are lots of ways that AI can help us. For me, a lot of it is just retrieving information. Like it's really hard to keep track of where are we getting this dimension from, and how should I be using it, and is it set over here, and stuff like that. Or one of the things in my presentation that I'm talking about is how to use AI to make up for lost data due to like lack of consent, or using AI to help remove bot data and things like that. So for that, where it's machine learning and algorithms and all of that, I trust it and I use it much further than the what I feel like all the vendors want me to do is be excited about the new AI tool in their interface that I can just ask a question and it'll create a report, but that's not the hard part, and, also not a part I particularly trust them on, but I would absolutely take advantage of, using it to combine information and help me more easily retrieve things and, help fill in some of the data gaps.
So it's interesting, again, talking about tools vendors, because I get to talk to quite a lot of them and have done over the years. And there are, I think it's all of the times that I've talked to a tool vendor, whenever there's been a change in the industry, and I ask, half a dozen of them, can your tool do that? Everybody says, yes, of course it can. Have you noticed in terms of because there have been a few vendors in the analytics field, Adobe, for instance, who've kind of dominated the marketplace? Are you seeing a kind of proliferation now of newer companies coming around? Like I'm seeing, I mean, my world was previously the SEO world. Everybody's got a new AI tool for SEO now. As to whether they work and what they do is a different thing, but everybody's got one. But are you beginning to see anything in terms of the tool set that you can tap into now that you go, well, maybe it's just not even blowing my mind, but man, that made that easier, or well, there's a great shortcut.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Adobe actually has a bunch of AI tools within their tool set. Though I'll admit I haven't used a lot of those, but more than it's funny because I follow the Google Analytics subreddit for some reason, even though I gleefully don't work in Google Analytics anymore. And almost every day, someone will come in with what problem could AI help you solve when you're doing Google Analytics marketing? I'm building a tool, and it is comical how much everyone seems to think they're the first ones to think of this. Um, but yeah, there are some tools. Moonbird's a company that's doing a lot of really cool stuff in AI that, for me, particularly on the data collection side, it helps with tag management and making sense of all of the code and infrastructure used to collect the data. So stuff like that is super useful. But then, like I said, Adobe and I feel like they all have some new AI interface they're very excited to show you. That I don't know. I'm less excited about those, but
So, Jim, again, given the fact that you've been running the conference for 25 years, and the tools vendors are usually great supporters and sponsors of the show, what are you seeing? Anything dramatically? Is there anything that you've seen on the horizon that you thought to yourself, "Oh, well, wish I was doing that"?
The
No.
landscape is changing so fast that it's impossible to put my finger on any one thing. My job is to keep track of how quickly everything is moving. And it is mind blowing on a weekly basis of what's possible. Um, the vendors are either putting a large language model on top of their data set, ask us anything, and it is almost valuable. Um, but the startups are going crazy. And the startup world is bizarre because somebody says, look what I was able to use. I built this on top of Claude. I built this on top of Gemini. And a week later, Anthropic pulls out a new feature set that startup, it's gone. It's now a feature. Any large language model can do that. So what are the vendors doing that's interesting is trying to keep up what the foundation models are capable of.
So, I guess that there is a lot of this, and again, not trying to paint all vendors with the same brush, but there's quite a lot of stuff that I've seen out there across the marketing spectrum where people are talking about their new AI tool, and I go, actually, that looks like the old tool, but with a new coat of paint, and
Absolutely.
not yeah, and nothing more than that.
And it
So
takes a bit to understand the difference when somebody says artificial intelligence. I mean, the true definition is whatever we didn't think a computer could do must be artificial intelligence. Spell check. Wow. And then we had machine learning, which is traditional AI, which is statistics writ large. But it is going from deterministic, this code runs this way all the time, to probabilistic machine learning. It's going to do statistics from here to the moon to figure out predictive analytics. Awesome. To generative AI, which is artistic. I mean, it is designed to make things up. And understanding the difference between those three is it's hard on the executive level to understand the generative AI is not computing the way that they are used to. It is something entirely different. And you can't just say, oh, AI will take care of it. It's like, no, code will run and you can count on it. Machine learning will give you some probabilities, and generative is going to do weird stuff. And if you embrace the weird, it's really valuable. But if you try to think that it is compute, you got a problem.
So I know a lot of people who are using Claude for all kinds of things, and man, they're coming up with some weird shit, believe me.
Absolutely.
And that's the only term I can give you for some of the stuff that they're coming up with. It's interesting as well, because as you know, Jim, I've been a member of ACM, which is the world's largest computing society, for 20 years now. And inside, I sit in a special interest group for information retrieval, which is, why I've been so fascinated with search and people understanding or trying to understand, how do you satisfy an information need for an end user. And so some of the stuff that I've written about search, and I go back and take a look. But when you said, machine learning and spell check, believe it or not, the very first public use of machine learning that Google used was "Did you mean?" which was basically a spell checker, believe it or not. So, and that was going back to 2000 or 2001 thereabouts. So they've been using it for a very, very long time. Given the fact that we talk about the way that AI is evolving, and again, we have to say AI is an umbrella term. There are so many things that are under, so it depends which area of AI you're looking at. But it's kind of reached a point where it's kind of controlling us and what we should be doing. But given, Jen, that you talked about governance and all of the data that you have to deal with, is there a way that you can control the AI so that it's not actually giving me the credit card numbers of everybody that you work with?
That's a good question, and Sony plays it very safe. I won't say we're slow, we're careful when it comes to AI. That there are policies of no code written by AI makes it to production without really thorough, careful review. But yeah, where there's other companies that I know are like zero human written code in 2026. I'm like, yeah, no, we are not near that, nor do I think we want to be. Um, so yeah, Sony as a huge company with security uh, issues in the past and things like that is playing it very, very carefully. And we get emails weekly about like this is what you can and can't do with AI, and it's all very regulated and tightly watched.
So there are great similarities between what's happening now and when people just became aware of the World Wide Web. I mean, if you think about it now, we go, the web, passe, that old thing kind of. But when the World Wide Web came around, people were like, holy moly, what is this kind of thing? And then the people who were using it for business had to decide how best they could use it between themselves and the relationship that they have with a customer, and customers doing the same thing. The reason that I mention that is that a friend of mine was at an event just last week, I think, and I saw he was writing about some of the topics that turned up in the conversation they were having at this event last week. He kind of used an analogy of back in the day against the way that we feel about AI and using AI now. He said, think about back in the day when people started talking about using credit cards on the World Wide Web. It's the same kind of thing, whether you're receiving the somebody's credit card details or you're the end user using a credit card. Everybody had to go that little bit more carefully and that little bit slower. So what do you think, Jim? I understand fully what Jen is saying there, but I think that there, on the one hand, there are so many people looking at this thinking, "Wow, we can race ahead and beat the competition," and who knows what you're going to crash into there. And then maybe it's the more moderate approach of let's just do this incrementally.
Credit cards are a great example. Would you give a credit card to your Claude skill to go buy something for you? Today, I'd be very hesitant because generative AI does think we don't know how and why it does what it does, but it will go do things in the world on our behalf. So until we have guardrails that are safe, it's a little nervous. Um, if I want to have no human code created, or yeah, no humans involved in coding by the end of the year, I need to create an enormous library of guardrails to say when you create code, these are our standards, double check for this, test for that, make sure that you imitate human interface design testing, try A/B testing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, which essentially is trying to codify the work that 20 people in the company are actively doing today. That is extremely close to impossible because we as humans really can't describe what we do to that level of detail. And even as we're doing it, we're making mistakes. And then the year after, in 2027, we're going to see Claude Code and OpenAI's Codex create those guardrails themselves in order to create their own tools. So by 2030, of course, there's no humans generating the code. There won't need to be. But between now and then, it's dangerous. It is Wild West.
So yeah, again, that's another thing that I saw recently. Somebody saying that whether it's Claude or whatever it is that you're using can write better code than a human. What it's actually doing is showing not how great it can create code, but how badly humans create code.
Oh, don't worry. It's bad at creating code as well. It's very capable at
Exactly.
writing bad code.
There's one thing that I want to touch on because it's been floating around for so long, and I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on this. But I don't know whether you know this, but Google made this huge announcement that the cookie is going away. Probably, probably about 10
Again?
years ago, and it's still. But that whole threat of the cookie disappearing and living in a cookieless world
Yeah.
led to all kinds of conversations and permutations on what if we didn't have that, we could do this. I've no idea where we are. I've no idea if they're still talking about it. I think the cookie still exists, but what do you think, Jen? Coming back to you, the cookie was so important to so many marketers. Is it going to be missed if it does go away because AI will give us something different?
That's funny
Or
because eMetrics last year, or sorry, Marketing Analytics Summit last year, that was actually one of the main topics of my presentation was
oh,
what's going on in the world of cookies and how does it actually impact us and how has it forced us to pivot and has it actually protected us as far as privacy goes? And I think that last one's a big one because no, it really hasn't. The conversations definitely have died down. You hear people talking about cookies less. The impact to our data is still rather high. Even if Google didn't do away with third-party cookies, Safari did a long time ago, and the world continues to turn. But what's happened, nobody's business models have changed, particularly like content sites. They still have to have advertising to have a website. They're not doing it out of the goodness of their heart, and they're going to have to track that. So if we say no more cookies, and we also don't want to pay $5 a month for our, interacting with this site, then they're going to figure out other ways to track us. And usually they're tied to actual data points about me. So instead of an anonymous identifier in a cookie on my browser, it's now my email address, my phone number, my name. Um, and yes, AI will absolutely have a part in putting all those pieces together of we think this is this person. Um, and all of that's because we were afraid of cookies.
Is it just going to make it easier for us to deal with first-party data and find ways and means of using that to not have to rely so much on third-party data?
You'd hope. I think a lot of companies have pivoted to that some, but I see a lot where the number of people who ask to deploy Facebook Cappy through JavaScript, when in my previous role, that show that like they're kind of missing the point that the only reason Cappy would provide more data is if you're sending first party backend data, and that means you have to maybe give up some of the easier stuff we think we have easy access to within the user's browser.
So there is life after the cookie. We're going to come back and talk about what's going to be happening at the 25th anniversary of the show. But given that you've just mentioned the keynote that you did last year, tell us about the keynote for this year. What can we expect this year?
So this year I'm presenting on how to make do with bad data, basically, between cookies and ad blockers and bots and lack of consent. Our data quality is not where we want it to be. But you can still make valuable decisions off of it. There's some things you can do to mitigate those problems, but and some of that has to do with AI. But our data is never going to be perfect. So how do we continue with it in a very imperfect state and still make valuable decisions?
Sounds unmissable to me. And if it sounds the same to you, rush out and get your ticket for the event now. There is still time to do it. Jim, 25 years later, we've only got a couple of minutes left, but give us just a little potted history and then tell us what's going to be the big change for the 25th.
Ooh, the history is that you and I met at Internet World way back in the day. And when that got sold to another marketing or another conference company that then went belly up, I said, well, wait a minute, where am I going to get my clients now when I've got to do public speaking? I know I'll do on my own conference. I know people like Mike Grean who know enough to get on my stage and help me understand, help my audience understand. 25 years later, the tools are constantly changing, the technology is changing. What's different is that through COVID and now through AI, people are discovering the value of being together in person. The in real life, face to face, hanging out and sharing phenomes are central to what it is to be human. And in order to maintain a professional network and in order to really learn from others, being in the same room can't be beat. So, what's different this time is I'm focusing a lot more on things that people can do together. It's going to be interactive sessions, it's going to be workshop like activities, it's going to be mutual mentorship with fewer but more valuable keynotes like Jen Kunz, who can explain what's going on at Sony to my audience. But I'll tell you, if you come to the Marketing Analytics Summit this year, you will walk away with a lot more connection than you did before.
Yeah, and I think it was just, people reflecting on this mainly during the COVID period, because that just sent the whole conference and the rest of the world, everything else, and then you start thinking to yourself, but the fact still remains, the beauty of the conference is that interpersonal thing, being able to hang out together. And as I've always said, given the fact that I run a conference myself for a long time, I wish that a lot of the stuff that people hear in the bar, people would talk about on the stage, because there's a lot of that just hanging out. Anyway, there is still time. It's going to be a fantastic thing. 25 years later, Jen's going to be there. Jim's going to be there. You're going to have a great keynote from Marty Weintraub on his fascinating book. So Marty's going to be along there as well. I recommend that everybody should go. And Jim, Jen, thank you so much for your time. I know it's a really busy period for you both. I really appreciate it. Honestly, I don't take it for granted. So thanks for dropping by. And then right after the conference, let's get back together again and find out what we learned.
It's a deal. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
And that's it for this one. Thanks to my guests for their time, wisdom, and great conversation. And thank you for joining me. If you enjoyed this show, please do me a favor and give it your best thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss another show. Oh, And very importantly, if you'd like to be on the show and join me here live on 65 on the 65th floor of the Empire State Building, just drop me a note, guests@insidemarketing.us. That's guests@insidemarketing.us. Catch you on the next one. Bye for now.